My report is about contingency management principles applied to school settings. I am Marisa L. Diaz, your reporter. The following set of principles is relatively comprehensive and is useful in situations where the teacher is required to implement a major program of behavior change based on contingency management principles. The principles specify an order of operation useful in setting priorities for behavior change. Number 1, target behavior should be specified. In this stage, this requires that teachers state in very precise terms those behaviors in need of change. This may involve increasing deficit behaviors, example, increasing the number of appropriate behaviors of their strength or their strength in a particular area, or reducing problem behaviors, example, reducing or eliminating inappropriate behaviors in a specific area. The important thing is to specify the dimensions, example, the type and kind of behavior, and the criterion level, the level that is acceptable in the specific context. For example, a teacher may wish to get a student with disabilities to finish 3 worksheets in math with a criterion of 80% accuracy in a period of 15 minutes, or to finish 4 writing assignments to a level of neatness specified in the written models over 15-minute period. Likewise, deficit behaviors can be specified in a similar manner. Both these objectives are highly specific and indicate the criterion level required by the teacher. Number 2, baseline data should be obtained before treatments are implemented. This stage involves taking precise measurements of current levels of behavior before an intervention is applied. A schedule for recording the target behavior should be determined. If appropriate, a stopwatch can be used for timing the occurrence of target behaviors. The frequency of behaviors over a set time period can then be recorded. The data collected over this initial measurement period form a baseline. For example, suppose a teacher aimed to increase the competency in oral reading of a student with disabilities. The teacher may have specified the target behavior as the number of words read correctly in a 3-minute period from a standard reading text. In establishing a baseline, a teacher would take several observations, perhaps 5 samples of 2 minutes each of the child's reading behavior on the specified material. The child would receive no instruction during this period. A graph of the frequency of these responses would constitute the record of the baseline responses. Number 3, a plan of action for intervention should be drawn up. A plan of action for a contingency management program is a scheme that indicates how intervention program will work in the classroom. It is presumed that baseline measures have already been taken. The scheme of action refers to the number of students and teachers involved, the scope of the program objectives, and the length of time the program will be in place. A statement should be included about the sequence of instructional events that will take place in the intervention program. Large-scale programs that attempt to achieve too much in a short time are often unsuccessful. It is usually best to start on a small scale with a strategy based on intervention. If the objectives have been well chosen and comprise of small set of practical tasks, then the program has a reasonable chance of success. For example, a teacher may decide to try a small-scale contingency management program during one period with one particular student with learning problems. If it works well in this situation, it might be possible to attempt it in other periods or other classes. Number 4, the intervention program should be matched with the needs of students. Example, suppose a teacher is attempting to improve the quality of assignment work in an integrated class that includes both regular class students and students with disabilities. This might be done by awarding tokens to those who complete the task better than their best score on previous assignment work. Both regular class students and students with disabilities must be given reinforcers, but only if they achieve at a higher level than their previous level or previous best scores. The work requirements for the two groups can be individualized. Other students or some students do difficult tasks while others easier tasks, but the goal is improving their previous best scores or score in the same for both. Number 5, the quantity and type of reinforcers should be selected to suit the particular situation. Teachers should distribute reinforcers more frequently to students with disabilities than they do to other students. The following are the characteristics of effective teachers of students with disability. Effective teachers of students with disability usually smile more often. They praise more frequently. They communicate with the students on an individual level more often, and they are more sensitive to the students' feelings and provide more support for assignment work because they know that such attention will be reinforcing and lead to better levels of knowledge and skill. They are also conscious of the need to vary the frequency of reinforcement and adjust levels of support to suit individual student needs. Teachers of children with disabilities are required to be more patient more often than are teachers of regular class children. Effective teachers of students with disabilities are able to catch the right time to reinforce students. They notice when students with disabilities are behaving appropriately and reinforce them immediately for such actions. When students behave inappropriately, they catch these actions as well. Less effective teachers are slower to respond to the behavior of students with disabilities and those with learning problems and seem not to know when to reinforce. They may praise and reprimand, but often it is at the wrong time and for the wrong reasons. Example, suppose a teacher is concerned about the level of talking out in the classroom. One or two children with disabilities may demonstrate these behaviors. Should a teacher spend time criticizing students whom seem to be the main problems in this regard? This would be the approach of many teachers. Or should a teacher try a different strategy? The better approach might be to look for periods during the day when the students with disabilities are hard at work and praise them at such times for attending the task and not talking out. This is an example of differential reinforcement of other behaviors, or DRO. The teacher should then record the number of times the talking out occurs during the period of reinforcing the more appropriate behaviors. The teacher should compare this data with figures obtained in the other periods when talking out typically occurs more frequently. In most classes, tactics like this result in marked behavior changes. Notice there are no guarantees in such a prediction. The success of any contingency program always depends to a large extent on the particular situation and the reactions of children. Number 6, ample reinforcements should be provided in the early stages of the program. A generous allocation of reinforcements for appropriate behavioral responses is vital during the early stages of training. The teacher's task is to focus on the behavioral objectives and apply the reinforcements according to a set contingency. After the appropriate behaviors have become well established, the reinforcement or the reinforcement schedule can be changed. Intermittent reinforcement can be used to support the desired responses. Intermittent reinforcement is the giving of reward in an irregular intervals. Number 7, cooperation of the teachers and parents should be obtained in the contingency management program. Parents can play a vital part in the contingency management programs. Cooperative programs between home and school usually work extremely well. The school can offer reinforcements for prescribed behavior or behaviors, and the home can support the school by offering similar contingencies for the same behaviors. Much of the research of Gasdin in 1980 supports the view that this kind of endeavor assists the development of a wide range of appropriate skills. This is usually the problem in the management plan of the school, because some, especially those two parents of students with problems, or students with problem in learning, are the ones who are not cooperating. That is the general view based from the experience. So we must meet the parents first before implementing this said program, contingency program, so that they will know what to do at home. Number 8, accurate records of behavior changes should be maintained. The keeping of accurate records and the constant review of data are essential part of contingency management. All the effects of the program depend on an accurate analysis of data obtained prior to intervention and data obtained after intervention. This can be a time-consuming task depending on the number of behaviors being measured. The method depends on a careful analysis of differences between baseline data and the data obtained both during and after treatment. The constant analysis of data is critical to the success of contingency management programs. Number 9, the contingency management program should be coordinated with other school activities. Coordination refers to the degree to which a program fits in with other aspects of school and classroom organization. In some schools, contingency management programs have been introduced, and the result has been disruption to the organization of other school activities. For example, teachers have offered reinforcements to some students for obeying school rules and not offered the same reinforcements to other students. This can lead to perception that some students are being favored over others. In other schools, or contingency management programs have been introduced that apply to all students and that results have been to the advantage of all concerned. It is good practice to discuss any new programs in this area with the principal of the school, the special education consultant, and other regular class teachers before introducing contingency programs to a particular class. Number 10. Reinforcers should be removed gradually once the behaviors have become well established. This is also called the return to baseline phase in experimental studies. For example, in one case, a teacher reinforced cooperative behaviors, perhaps by using tokens, the behaviors observed in a group of students. Every time the children exhibited these behaviors, the teacher praised them and awarded a token. The teacher then decided to phase out these tokens and use occasional praise to maintain the cooperative behaviors. This phasing out was done slowly so that the original levels of cooperation could be maintained. Eventually, the tokens were removed together, and the praise used by itself to reinforce the desired behavior. If the levels of appropriate behavior drop away to any significant extent, it is usually necessary to reintroduce the schedule of tokens. Number 11. Evaluation programs should be maintained throughout the whole program. This stage requires an overview of all that has been achieved in the program up to that time. Teachers should decide whether the goals of the program had been met. They also should evaluate the program in terms of its cost effectiveness. Has the effort been worthwhile in getting the desired change? Is there a simpler way of achieving the same objectives? How can the behavior change be maintained? Can the same procedures be used to change other aspects of the child's behavior? Each of these questions gives some guidance as to the value of the contingency program. Next are the special procedures used in contingency programs or contingency management programs. The following procedure and strategies are often used in contingency management programs. Each has the potential to change the behavior of students with disabilities. All can be applied in the classroom situation. Number 1 is the token economies. Token economies is probably the most popular strategy of contingency management used in schools today. A token economy is a system of exchange that involves the distribution of points, stickers, check marks, and other symbolic rewards distributed in class as reinforcers for learning. These reinforcers are extremely useful motivators with both regular class students and students with special needs. The method is not difficult to implement, and it is usually effective over long periods. Most token economy systems are based on 3 basic rules. These 3 basic rules of token economy or token economy system was based to River in 1985. First, students are rewarded with token for appropriate behavior. Second, tokens are awarded in proportion to effort or task achievement. Third, tokens can be exchanged for other reinforcers. Many token economy procedures used in schools provide token to groups for individual learning. For example, students may be allocated a team or two teams, rows or groups, and the teams rewarded with tokens if individuals perform at standard required by the teacher. For another example, a teacher may give points to the group because individuals in the group have performed well in completing a class assignment. This kind of arrangement encourages cooperation among groups or the group members. It is possible to give tokens for individual learning, and such a strategy usually works well if the class group is small. Application of the following usually leads to successful outcomes. Number one, devise a system of tokens to be used as credits for reinforcers. The teacher should choose a set of tokens that has appeal to the class group. Most give stamps, stickers, or check marks that can be exchanged for material reinforcers or privileges at a later time. If the group reinforcement system is being used, then it is good practice to display the cumulative points gained by a team in place where all can see. Number two, develop a set of rules that specify the behaviors that will be rewarded with tokens. Students need to be told that behaviors will be rewarded and what conditions will apply to the reward of tokens. It is best to keep the rules simple and implement the program only during selected periods of the day. The token economy can later be extended to other periods. Distribute the tokens to students who contribute to the group achievements. The teacher should make sure that all students or individuals and groups receive a fair allocation of tokens for work completed. Students with disabilities should be allocated to different groups so that a concentration of students with disabilities in one group does not inhibit the performance of any one group to an excessive degree. Sometimes students can be given points or tokens if they exceed their previous best score in class assignment work. A wide range of behaviors can be rewarded by teacher, including assignment completion, marks on a class test, tidiness of a project work group and or the project work group, and individual improvement. Number four, devise a system of token exchange. The teacher should allocate periods for the exchange of tokens for other reinforcers. Free time for private reading or time allocated to favorite activities are popular rewards. Some teachers arrange visits to places of interest outside the school. In some cases, it is sufficient to provide a certificate of merit or symbolic reward exchange for another to the winning team or individual. Maybe a trophy is also very good example. Next procedure is contingency contracting. This is a strategy that involves the teacher in contracting a student to complete a set of tasks in a specified way. If the student keeps to the terms of the contract and complies with its obligations, then the student will be given a reinforcer designated in the contract. A student will often be asked to sign a written statement that confirms the terms of the contract. In a typical case, the student is asked to complete a series of tasks at a certain level of proficiency. In another situation, the requirement might be that the student will not display inappropriate behaviors during the class periods. This strategy is not often used with students under the age of 10 because most are unable to comprehend the terms of a contract agreement. It is more likely to be used in older students with behavior problems. In contingency contracting, the following should be considered. Number one, write a contract based on a realistic principles. The contract should state in simple terms the behaviors required of the students or student and the levels of reinforcement for complying with the terms of the contract. The contract should not make excessive demands, nor should it include provisions that the student cannot be reasonably expected to comply with in normal class situations. The student should be aware that the teacher will be judging both the quantity and the quality of responses specified in the contract. The student should be given a reference copy of the contract. Number two, make sure the student understands the terms of the agreement. It is usual to ask the students if they understand the rules of the game. The teacher should explain carefully the key terms of the agreement. If the contract is a written one, it is sometimes a good practice to underline or mark in some other way the word or the keywords and phrases of the agreement. Number three, do not use the contract as a threat, but a statement of agreement between partners. The contract should be seen as a statement of aims and goals, not as a means of extracting unfair advantage over a student. If the terms of the contract appear unreasonably after or unreasonable after a trial period, the teacher and student should renegotiate the contract. Next procedure is shaping. Shaping is a procedure that exemplifies a small steps strategy and is based on training and reinforcing each small step or behavior in a planned sequence until a final objective is achieved. According to Gelfand and Hartman in 1984, the teacher should prime and reinforce successive approximation of the desired behavior. The following schedule is based on the principles recommended by Caroli and Harris in 1986. First, carefully observe the individual to be trained. Next, decide on the terminal behavior and a plan to reach the goal. Next, establish a criterion for the first approximation. Next, arrange an appropriate setting and occasion for the training. Differentially and reinforce behaviors that approximate the desired response. Another, use verbal or gestural cues and prompts at all stages of the training process. Number 7, or the last, record the changes in goal behavior and change the criterion. Carefully observe the individual to be trained. Observation and analysis should precede all attempts to plan a program of behavior change. This is the important first step in shaping process. Data should be gathered on the stimuli that can be used to reinforce target behaviors. Prerequisite behaviors should then be identified before attempting any shaping procedure. Decide on the terminal behavior and a plan to reach that goal. The teacher should decide on a likely final behavior that is attainable in the context of training. Teachers should be careful not to choose a target behavior that is too difficult or beyond the capabilities of the learner. Task analysis strategies need to be initiated so that the steps to achieve the goal can be specified. For example, a teacher may plan to have the learner write a legible letter W. The beginning stage may require the student to do the first part of the letter, the V, then the second part, the second V, and finally put the two together. Both the target behavior and the component steps should then be set down in behavioral terms. The teacher needs to know exactly what forms of behavior to aim for at each stage of training. Next, establish a criterion for the first approximation. This requires setting of standard for the first subtask or intermediate objective. The teacher will need to decide the level of competence required by the criterion for their first approximation. For example, the teacher may decide that the terminal behavior is to draw an equilateral triangle. The key problem here is to determine the limits of error allowed by the students in meeting standard requirements for equal length of sides of a triangle in this context. Number 4, arrange an appropriate setting and occasion for the training. Shaping usually works best when the teacher or aide is free to provide one-to-one tutoring. Each phase of the program needs to be carefully monitored. Next, differentially reinforce behaviors that approximate the desired response. The teacher should prompt each of the behaviors that approximate the final target behavior. The teacher should carefully examine the student's response or any part of the response that approximates the criterion that has been set for the first stage of training. Any behavior that shows some of the required elements within reasonable limits should be reinforced. For example, the student may place the pencil next to the ruler, but not mark the paper. If teacher judges that the student has made a reasonable effort to achieve the goal, then this behavior should be reinforced. Further demonstration should be tried, and every behavior that gets closer to the desired target response should be reinforced. Next, use verbal or gestural cues and prompts at all stages of the training process. In most cases, students with learning problems require constant assistance to achieve the final goal. Sometimes it is advisable to provide a particular cue for a difficult stage of the task. Prompts and physical guidance may also be necessary at different stages of learning the task. Not surprisingly, at various stages of this learning process, students will regress to more elementary levels of responding. If this occurs, the teacher must return to an earlier stage of training. Next, record the changes in goal behavior and change the criterion. This form of training is essentially a best adjustment form of training. The child will not always do the task in the way anticipated by the trainer, but that is not important. What is important is that each approximation of some aspects of the desired behavior is recognized and reinforced. The teacher should record each day's events and the subtask completed in each stage of training. That ends my report. The continuation will be reported by my co-reporter. Procedures such as extinction, timeout, and others will follow. Thank you for listening.